Welcome to another edition of Inside the War Room. Ryan right here as always, and today my guest is Ed Latimore, former boxer, current stoic. Is that the right word? Purveyor of the red pill, potentially. Mr. Latimore, it is wonderful to get you on. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Just got back from a good run. Try to get a workout in every day. It's pretty. It usually works out that way. So it's nice. Then got back, got my coffee, and then now sitting ready to have a great conversation, man.
All right. Well, let's start with boxing because I was looking at you retired back in or your last fight, at least I guess you're officially retired, is back in 2016.
Yeah.
And
So, oh yeah, I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say yeah. So that was It was like December 16th or something,
Mhm,
2016, and I took the year off to finish up work on my degree,
mhm.
and did that, and came back and was getting ready for a fight in 2018. Didn't do anything in the gym in 2017. Recovery was going really well, training was going great. Then I got hurt during practice, but at that point, my life had changed dramatically, and I said, uh, let me go take advantage of this opportunity and these positions. And then I toyed with the idea of coming back and forth, and now I'm like, life is too good, man. I'm not really
So
because
there's two names that's and for if you're not in the boxing world, you don't know this, but BoxRec.com is where you can go find people's records and who they fought. And so there's two
yeah,
names.
it's impossible to fake it.
It's impossible to fix,
So
right?
if anyone tells you they fought pro, you just type them in, man. It'll be box rec right there.
Yeah. So I used to manage some fighters back in the day, or I say back in the day, it's more recent than your fighting career. But two names stuck out to me. One, you fought kind of a if you're a hardcore MMA fan and boxing fan,
Oh,
Travis
Travis,
Travis Fulton.
yeah.
That's right. You fought Travis Fulton. But I saw that. I was like, good grief. So
Yeah, man, he's a road warrior. He came up. If I remember this correctly, he was like, we had two guys because fighting sucks, man. You always got to have a backup, and because the guy you want to fight, will find any reason, especially at the lower level, when you have another backup, whatever. And it happens all the time, even at the higher levels. Where it'll get at least not like until you get to like title fights. Uh, they'll sub somebody in if they can. And there were two guys we had, neither of them could make it. And Travis was like, he was like, I'm in the air or something like that. And he took the fight.
yeah.
And that was cool, man.
And the other one, I didn't recognize. I didn't recognize the name until I was looking around at it. You fought Tommy Morrison's son. I
Yeah,
didn't
man, that
realize that.
was a loss, man. That was a hell of an experience. Yeah,
Okay,
cool guy. I,
so I
I I still talk to him to this day.
yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So when I was managing fighters, I had I think one boxer, maybe two, but I had a couple MMA guys, and they were trying to put on a show, and they were wanting to get Tommy Morrison's son on there. So this has been after you had fought him. That's how my
Which one? He's got two fighting.
this would have been the one that you were fighting. This
Okay.
was the same guy. And they're trying to get him on a show, but he doesn't go by Morrison. He has this weird
He goes
name,
by Trey Lippe
Trey
with his
Lippy.
mother's name. Yeah.
Yeah, they try to, and so they called me up like, "Hey, we need a heavyweight to fight this guy. It's Tommy Morrison's son," and they were really trying to pick. Really, I mean, in boxing, for people who don't know, when you start out, if you're what they call kind of an A side fighter, like they're really trying to match you up and make sure that
Yeah.
you get your W's. But in this case, it was really extreme because at this point, he had a lot of he'd been pretty successful. They were still really trying to find this almost. So how did you get mixed up with him? I'm curious because you have a really good record, and
So here's how it happened, man. And it's funny you say that because then I have to put a caveat out there. When you got guys over 200 pounds throwing leather, uh, all you gonna need is a good shot to put him down. I mean,
right,
he gave me with a great
right,
shot, and I was like just not going to. And it was too early for me to recover
right.
in the round. So I mean, kudos to him. I take absolutely nothing away. I mean, it was a good. It was like really the best thing that happened to me losing that fight.
Mhm.
But in terms of how I got involved, so behind the scenes, is there are there are agreements, and different promoters have different television dates, and a TV date is like gold in the boxing promotion world
Mhm.
because there's no because even now that's changing a little because we got streaming services now, and the guys, any promoter worth his salt with a little bit of cash and savvy is investing in a streaming structure so he can kind of be not decentralized. But even still, TV dates are gold because most people associate, Showtime when HBO was doing it at HBO. I
Mhm.
think their fights still on ESPN.
Mhm.
Dazzn technically are TV dates, even though they're streaming. And I'm trying to think who else is showing fights. Showtime. Somebody else is showing fights. It'll come to me.
Fox
Oh,
has
Triller. Triller was the
Thriller.
thing. Yeah. Um, but point is, when you get on those cards, that's a big deal because now the network is putting money in, and their money's coming from advertisers and subscriptions, as opposed to when you're fighting on a small card in a house. Your gate is pretty much the people who sold the
Right.
tickets. That would
Mhm.
rather your revenue. If you can get some sponsorships, even better. But that's why your fighters don't make that much money. All right, so now we got that set. I guess at that point in time, I was being managed by Rock Nation, and they had some deal with the people who's running Morrison's folks, and I can see the guy in my head. I can't think of his name, who his manager was, and everything. But he was being managed, but he was being trained by Roach, and I guess they looked at my fight prior to that against Juan Good. That was a rough fight. I mean, I got knocked around pretty badly. If I was in another city, maybe I lose that fight or it's a draw. But they said, yeah, we can probably beat this guy. So they took their shot. I thought it was if I was in their position, I would have done the exact same thing because here I am. I'm not improving, and I've got a good record and everything. But if you're a good coach, you can see my weaknesses. And he had Freddie Roach, one of the best, who
Mm.
probably took one look at the
Right.
tape and said, we can probably beat this guy. Uh, so
Mhm.
they did it, and it was a good decision, clearly on their part. But that's how I got hooked up with that fight. And my contract guys owed me a fight
Uh,
at that level because I had been with them for a year. So it was just like it was a perfect kind of clash of storms. My manager said we can turn this because it wasn't, nothing in boxing is above water, as the old saying
oh, yeah.
goes.
Oh, yeah.
As the old saying goes, the only
Yeah.
thing square in boxing is the ring, right? The I actually took less money than I'm supposed to make for that fight because they promoted it as this Showtime deal, and I had a minimum for a Showtime fight, and they were like, well, this it was an interesting case because Morrison's got a name and they wanted to like kind of co-promote. So they actually had, I think it was 4 fights on TV as opposed to 3. Because
Mhm.
what a lot of people don't know is when you see a fight on TV, you're seeing the tip of the spear.
Mhm.
They've been fighting all
All
day.
night. All night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all night. Yeah, so I've seen it all day in some
Yeah,
cases.
all day. Yeah,
They,
that's
they,
right.
they've been putting cards on because whenever you get the commissioner in one place, because the commissioner's got to be there for the fight,
Good.
you want to take as advantage of that and get as many fights on as you can. It's just not feasible
Mhm.
to put them all on television.
Mhm.
So that's how that happened, and it was. I mean, I had a great experience getting to see kind of the beast and really learning about it from that end. The business side of boxing is way more interesting to me than the fighting side because effectively, what you're asking guys to do a lot of times is everybody is trying to be smarter than the other guy.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is no one goes into a fight after a certain point thinking they'll lose. At the very least, your fighter never any fighter worth his soul, even if he's a journeyman, doesn't go into a fight thinking he'll lose. I had a buddy just this week, Johnny Rice, was fighting. I can't even remember the guy's first name, but his last name is Coffee, spelled Coffie. And Rice is a journeyman. His record was 13-6-1 going in there. Coffee was an up and comer and A-sider at 12-0, and he knocked him out in the 5th round. That's not what's supposed to happen. Is on a balance of
Mhm.
probabilities. These guys are trying to develop their A-side fighters, like you
Right.
said. But it's fun every now and then someone will make a mistake, and I put it up on my Instagram, well, on my Instagram, on my Facebook, and on my Twitter. I took one look at that fight, and I said, I messaged Johnny. I said, Johnny, you're gonna win the fight. How I bet on this one?
Let me put down some money on it.
Yeah, because I'm looking and I'm like, how the hell did they think putting this guy against you was a good idea? And he had what he told me. I don't know how familiar you are with the game.
Mm,
I'll just say a name and then you'll know it or you won't. But either way, the point is he had another opponent, Gerald Washington. He was supposed to fight him, and
mm,
Gerald tested for COVID. So they needed to get a guy in. That's why I said they can interchange guys. And so
mhm,
they went, okay, who's comparable? And I've
mhm.
been watching Johnny improve just through what he shows and talking to him. And I said, man, you're going to beat this kid, and he did. So but that's not what's supposed to happen
Right.
because that now that's kind of that's kind of an odd situation for the promoter, right? Your up and coming guy just got knocked out. When that happened to me, they cut my ass. They got rid of me immediately, right? So
Yeah,
now they're
yeah.
out a guy, but you also got this other guy with a record of what 14-6-1. You can't promote that,
Do that. Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because those 6 losses, if he's a decent journeyman, those 6 losses are against like legit guys. So what are we gonna do? We're not gonna give him a title shot. We're not gonna sign him because what are we gonna do with a guy that's 14-6?
Right.
But at the same time, uh, we now know kind of when we go to pitch a fight to a guy, it gets harder for us to go. All right, Johnny's a good test. He's a good test for a guy that's maybe 19-0, but now Johnny's gonna cost more money because
Hmm.
he's 19-0. As
Right.
opposed to he was a good test for a 12-0 guy. Now we know that's
Good.
wrong.
He's too good.
Right. And he
It,
was cheap. He was cheap at 12-0. Now he's gonna be even more expensive at 19-0.
it's funny because we'll maybe unpack a little bit here for people who are listening. In boxing, you see these guys when they get to about 20, depending on the division, but 20 to 23-0, somewhere in that range. That's when they start fighting other guys who are kind of 20-0, and they're champions or they're fighting for championships. So I was at a ShowBox card. I had one of my guys on there. And to your point, they had like I don't know 9 or 10 fights on the card.
Yeah.
Devin Haney was the headliner, and so I
Okay.
was sitting next to. I got a picture somewhere with a senior Floyd Senior, Floyd Mayweather's dad, and all those guys, and he had his crew, and it was I was sitting cage side or ringside, but I think Haney and 2 other fights were actually on the Showtime, but they brought in a guy from South Africa. And he was like 20-0, and he was kind of the champion for whatever organizations. And so they bring him in, but even Haney's guys, that even though he was 20-0, they knew,
they
they knew,
knew because
they knew.
that's the thing. That's why the first of all, one I had no idea. I gotta jump back for a minute. I always just agree to do a show.
Mhm.
That's like my thing. It's a big thing for me to give back. Okay. And to just do these things. I had no clue that you were like a dude who knew the game. Uh no idea. So that's a pleasant surprise. Okay. Uh so kind of with that said, and that probably stood out to you too. I'm
Mhm.
13-0 and he's 11-0, and that doesn't really happen anymore. And that was the big story around that fight. Guys putting their records on the line that early
Mhm.
in their career, but that doesn't really happen. But to your point, everybody thinks they're smarter than the other guy.
Mhm.
So, but that's part of it. But there's also an incredible marketing engine. It's just the fighters don't really benefit from it, or maybe there's not that much money. Who knows? But yeah, he's 20-0. But we know that like they just look at the film, and now there's film for everywhere. Back in the day, this was probably a bit more difficult to deal with. That's why they say the old school fighters were probably better because your freaking 20-0 back in the day was against 20. You don't know. I mean, you gotta do is take somebody's word. Now everybody wants to put the film out. We can see, did you improve your footwork? Your punch is good. What you doing? And guys talk now as a network. It's a stronger network. But that 20-0 guy from South Africa, we know he didn't fight anybody. Like hearing that 20-0 from South Africa, who did he fight, right? And you look at that, and BoxRec is funny. BoxRec actually puts stars next to your.
Mhm.
If you don't have any stars on those 20, this is a good test for you, and that's and from their perspective, that's great because what should happen is you go below that guy. You got a 20-0 on your record. It looks nice. It's all marketing to everyone else out there, but it looks good. And plus, it is kind of legit because at 20-0, what you have is is
Right.
you have confidence,
Yeah, so
right?
you can't just it's not that's not like 2-0. I don't know how many amateur fights. I've got it pulled up right here. And that shows amateur fights. But yeah, he's 28-2 now. So if you want to look it up, I cannot pronounce the gentleman's name, but Devin Haney fought on January 11th of 19. I thought it was a different time of year. But anyway, January 11th, 19, in Shreveport, Louisiana. That card is the card I'm referring to.
Oh, okay.
So for anyone listening, they want to go look it up, go watch the fight or whatever. You can see me sitting there next to Mayweather's crew and Devin Haney's crew, I guess in this case. And so
But here's the cool thing, right? If that guy somehow wins, and they write these things in all the time, if he wins, he'll automatically be signed to that promotion. Now they got a 21-0 guy to work with off the jump. They didn't have to do any work building his record up. He just showed up. So it's a really fun engine. In the end, the fighter is the one who is kind of the bottom of the barrel in it, but it's interesting to learn and see how that works. I'm a big fan of the Logan brothers and what they're kind of doing to disrupt things, because if any fighters and promoters are looking at this with a shred of intelligence and not just kind of preemptively judging, they're going, okay, get the platform, getting the distribution, because fighters don't understand this. And I don't know if you've ever had this discussion with a fighter. They don't understand that the reason why you're not getting more money is because here's the thing: the venue holds 1,000 people. We sold 90% of those tickets, and 70% of those were general admission at 30%. We got to cover the insurance. We got to cover your opponent in case you want a killer.
Right.
We got to cover your opponent. We got to get him here. We got to put him in a hotel. We got to cover the ring. We got to pay the doctors, right? And then just maybe I, the promoter, won't have to come out of my own pocket to cover it.
And here's the other thing. And so I stopped managing fighters at the beginning of 2020. And I've thought about getting back into it, not the point of this discussion today, but I would have to tell them, guys, I'm not trying to be rude. No one cares. Here's the thing. No one cares. Like when you go there to fight, no one cares. Okay. You might bring in, 50 or 100 people. That's your crew.
Shit, you bring in 100 people, you're a rock star.
I'm being generous. You gotta pump it up a little bit, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But okay, if you bring in 100 people, you're a rock star. So but you're probably right. You probably bring in one table, two tables, 10 to 20 people, right? Okay, no one cares. And if you go to these regional fights, what you'll see is by the time the main event gets there, unless the main event is really a star, the crowd's gone.
Yep. Are they so drunk that the sober people are gone?
Well, because they came to see the guy who was third fight of the night, the fight that's early on, or the sixth fight of the night, or whatever. And so they saw that, and and so this is what interests me about you, was that you were a boxer, and now you're kind of in the business world, the brand world, the stoic stuff, and you kind of got all this stuff. It's like, this is interesting because dealing with fighters is tough, because fighters are damaged goods a lot of times because they've been.
Oh, dude, you man. That's why I said, I cannot tell you how awesome this conversation is already. Because you know exactly. I actually, because I'm working on this article right now, because everyone asks me, because it's a common question, and you'll understand it. You haven't even broached it, but regular people always ask why I quit fighting. I only had one loss, and I'm like, because I make like $20K a month on the internet. That's why.
Right.
It's pretty much why. Like, I could go fight, but it's a hard life. It's a hard life, and it's an unforgiving, miserable, thankless life. And if you get into fighting, I say this all the time, at least in the United States, if you get into fighting, if you're athletic enough to do something and really go somewhere great, then I gotta ask why you're not on the gridiron, on the basketball court, or if you're a white guy on the hockey rink or the baseball diamond. I gotta ask what happened, and usually it's because you was breaking the law.
So that's my son. We're actually going to the UFC. We're driving down to Houston this afternoon to go to the UFC this weekend. My kids love watching the fights, and they always ask me, about a fighter and this, that, and the other. And they'll, especially when I was managing the fighters and stuff, and and I always tell them, I said, guys, we got to understand that a lot of these guys, and I'm not trying to be judgmental here, they just came from rough backgrounds, and this was their way out. And you see that, and boxing is even 10x more, because boxing, For those who don't know, a little inside baseball here, boxing gyms is like $25 a month to go work out in, whereas MMA is like 125. So,
Shit,
box-
actually, I'll do you one better. When I first started fighting, the first 3 years of my career, I fought at a
Mhm.
community gym. It
Yeah,
was it was funded by a grant. I didn't pay a thing.
right. So boxing attracts poor people who are looking for something. And they come in here and they kind of have a little structure. If you've seen the movie, not the movie, the show The Wire, I always said The Wire at the end.
Right, with the guy from prison who sets up the
That's right.
boxing gym.
That's
Yep.
right. And you kind of see that struggle, and that's probably a lot more real than people want to admit. And so, anyways, yeah, and, I've been in locker rooms after guys have lost and they lose on a regional card, and the devastation is hard for people to understand because if you know the game, you realize even in MMA where you can have losses, it's tough because the UFC ain't calling you anytime soon now. You're at least a year, 2 years out.
Yep.
You're working maybe two jobs to support your what I'm calling a habit because it's not a professional career. You're getting paid, but you're not getting
Dude,
paid.
you
You
are
know.
you are putting this in better words. I'm actually, yeah, like you are putting this in better words than I ever could have, man. This is really because I have my perspective,
Mhm,
and my perspective is that of a fighter.
mhm,
And I had my career unbelievable fortune,
mhm,
amateur and professional,
mhm.
and so it wasn't as hard as it could be. It was still miserable, but it wasn't as hard as it could be.
Right.
But and I'm smart enough. I recognize that I needed to set myself up to do something else. But there's I call it the fighter's graveyard.
Mm,
Most guys ain't like me.
mhm.
When they leave a game, they're not going to a better, freer, healthier life. You know.
No, yeah, and so it's tough because you have people come from a kind of maybe a rough background, or they're just trying to find an outlet. And this isn't, these are just generalities. And then they go and they go and they chase this dream, and the dream is actually achievable on some level, right? Because if you can beat that man in front of you, you know, then that's just one step closer. But to your point, it's about the Paul brothers. I'm not a fan of the Paul brothers per se, but I think maybe they're going to open up the fighters to realize that people care about the Paul brothers, right? Now,
Right.
The Paul brothers, to be clear, they cannot run a consistent organization because they don't have enough fighters in their stable. They don't, but they can put on 2 to 3 fights a year, sell a pay per view, and then put out 600 YouTube videos between then, and it
And
works.
make a
Yeah, right.
I do that. I say people all the time. If I really wanted to, like, if I really wanted to do this, right? If I woke up tomorrow and said, you know what, fuck is wrong with you, and I can fight, I'm gonna
Let's
go
go.
do this. I wouldn't have to fight good guys anymore. like I don't know if I could like look at myself in the mirror and do this, but with my following, all I would, every now and then, pump it up, find me some good old trash cans, like
Mhm,
are some paper tigers, guys with those records like 15 and 3, but all 15 of the wins were against guys with no wins or something, right?
mhm, mhm, mhm,
Put that on, get the distribution myself, go out there, probably easily make probably $50,000-$60,000 just on selling the infrastructure myself and break even. But that's because I built because they care about me.
but people care about you. That's the difference. That's the difference, and that's hard. It's not, and this is the thing that most people don't have the talent of the Paul brothers. So it's not saying that you can turn on the YouTube camera and things are going to work out for you, but you do have to start to build an audience, get people to care about you, and getting people to care about you means that you have to. And this is kind of a weird thing. Is what I want to talk to you about is you have to talk about things that get people to care, right? And so just saying that, if you turn on Skip Bayless or Shannon Sharp, they are saying things because they're trying to find what does Ed care about, and let me poke him on that, whether we get him to
Yeah.
love us or to hate us. Now that's very sensationalized. So how have you gone about transitioning to a career that's built on people caring about you, right? So in boxing, you want people to care, and it's kind of hard to get them to care because you're a fighter and they got a lot of things going on, and you're not fighting on the headlines all the time. But now your career is people have to care. How do you do that without being overly sensational, but sticking true to your principles?
Yeah. So you got to understand. I really stumbled into this when you look at it that way. I was just like, you know what? I want to write. I've got a particular way of communicating. I think I'm good at breaking things down and understanding them. Let me put this. to the internet. And that's always been kind of my dream. I've always been a big fan of blogs. The idea fascinated me that I could just bypass the mainstream and exist on the internet. I had no idea that like everybody would be on the internet one day. And so like in many ways my reach is greater than than a lot of people who right. But they don't I say all the time they really don't care about me, or they care about how I can help them. And from there, they come to care about me. So I guess to answer your question, what I'm always trying to do is help. Very little of my stuff is inflammatory because I just don't want one. When you go down that route, you have to become inflammatory. There's no way to separate the two, and I'm just not interested in that stress because I can feel that, and I can feel how out of peace that makes me. So I try to be at peace, and I try to not be an inflammatory presence. I try to be a helpful presence. My website is a bunch of stuff. I mean, you read my website. I mean, I teach you. Yeah, you'll get a bunch of game about how to improve yourself, and I'm always trying to add that in different aspects and different areas, and the ways I think and the ways I've improved myself. It really just so happens that people care about getting better. you know, people care about my perspective on things, and I want to call myself this branding genius, but the reality is I'm just a guy who recognized that I have a thing to say and people care about it. And then you be prolific, you put stuff out there, and it ends up working out. A lot of people are too afraid to not now. Also, I don't want to make it sound like anybody can just hop on
Right.
and do what I do. You got to remember, man, I got a life. I'm 36 now. One of the things I say about being 36 is I've been an adult more than half my life now, right? That's
Right.
kind of significant. All
Right.
right. Then I've got the experiences of doing a very difficult or a few difficult things. I mean, I think three of the most challenging aspects of my life. To do one or two is enough, but to have three in one person, and that's arguable. There's maybe four or five or six. We got the professional fighting that gives me a perspective. I
Hmm.
got going back to school as an adult and getting a degree in physics, not a slouch degree, man. That's a real top. Like I
Tough.
was in
It's
there, I
tough.
couldn't
Yeah.
phone that one in,
Right.
right? There's
Right.
no papers. I had to solve problems. Uh, getting sober and staying that way, and then
Mhm.
talking about it and breaking down that experience and where I grew up. I grew up in public housing, man. At
Mhm.
risk kids, single mom, all that. Like all of this comes together, and I'm always trying to pull ideas from it, and I'm always trying to get better. It's not just enough to be here, and because I have that background plus this brain that's very good at, thank goodness, wherever it came from. This brain that's very good at taking the essence of a thing and seeing a problem and then breaking it down. It's good. And then I'm lucky too. I was born as a millennial. I still contend that even better than Gen Z, the millennials have a distinct advantage on the internet because we have one foot in a world where none of this shit existed. I mean, and none of it like I mean, you got legit memories of like not having GPS, not
Right.
having texting, not
Right.
having social media, not even having the internet. Forget about wireless internet and
Right.
smartphones, not even having it.
Hmm.
And then it comes along, and then these devices show up. So a lot of us were building a real legitimate life as opposed to trying to just show out for social media. And it just so happens that some of us did some hard things, and people take and find a lot of interest in that, and they go, I want to be like that guy, I want to follow what he says. I liken it to a lot of these guys who come out of the Navy SEALs make brands of themselves. I don't think any, let's put it like this: if you go into the Navy SEALs thinking, this is gonna be cool, I'm gonna be the next, Leaf Babin or Jocko Willink, right? Yeah, you can get your ass, yeah, like you won't make it,
Right.
right? So a lot of us had really pure motivations, and then it just so happens there was a world after that. And I am very much the one with I had like when I started fighting. I mean, it wasn't when no one was streaming fights. There wasn't even really. I mean, there was some YouTube, but not really. It was a thing I wanted to do, man. I needed to. I needed to develop myself, and I think I chose the hardest school to do it, and I'm really happy I did.
Oh yeah, you think about the boxing world, and you touched on it earlier. So boxing is probably on some level more corrupt today, but also less corrupt because you know, well, go think about it. Back in the '70s. If you wanted to bring in a guy to fight Ed, and you wanted, and Ed's A side, well then when you call this trainer, you're saying, "Listen, Ed's my A guy. Who you send me? I need to know. I need to know."
Right. You
Because
know, you want to talk about how corrupt things used to be? I watched this documentary. I think it's either about Marvin Hagler specifically, or about I call them the Fantastic Four: Leonard Duran, or Hearns, and Hagler, who all fought in the '70s and '80s, and they were talking about how Hagler was like. I mean, I guess he was like 30 something and oh before they gave him a title shot. And the only reason why they gave him a title shot is I guess his coach or his trainer had some type of connection and was like, look here, something ain't right here, and I'm gonna get like a Senate hearing or bring a senator to like look into this. My guy can't get a shot. And they're like, all right, whatever, let's give him a shot. But that's how corrupt things used to be.
no, I know, I
Now,
know.
nowadays they just make ranking systems and come up with a new alphabet system to pull people in.
So you talk about getting people to help them improve, and going through the boxing. Obviously, I think some people kind of have an idea of what you go through, but they really only see the end product, right? What's in the ring, the fights in the ring, and they don't realize it's Tuesday morning and you got to go to the gym and get punched.
Uh,
You got to go jump rope. But that does resonate with people today. Why is it that you think that we are in 2021? Aside from COVID, you can say the same thing about 2019. We're in the most prosperous time in the history of humanity, especially for the U.S., but even globally, the global GDP, it's
oh,
all
it's a great time to
right.
live.
And yet people are struggling to figure out their meaning, how to improve themselves. What is it? What's going on from your perspective?
Um, Jordan Peterson touches on this idea. I took some of it from him, but he says, that we need, responsibility has meaning,
Hmm.
and that's part of it. And we have really kind of alleviated responsibility, but another big part of it is I really believe that humans find their meaning through challenges, through difficulty. And that's interesting because or overcoming challenge and making it through difficulty.
Hmm.
And that sounds when you think about that and just look at what our driving motivations are, uh, very few people, as evidenced by the state of humanity, very few people choose the hard way.
Hmm.
In times before, the hard way was thrust upon you. You didn't really have a choice but to do things the difficult way. And that's in everything from your physicality. Most guys worked in factories or some kind of job
Hmm.
where they needed to be strong, and we needed women to assume a certain role as well. And then or like socially, like you had to like go make friends and ask a girl out as opposed to sliding in the DMs, or even food choice, man. What no, I mean, I think about how easy it is to go get food that is processed and packed with nutrients now. Now the bigger issue is restraint. Very few people. I will even go as far as to say none, and then let who wants to push back. No one in any developed nation has under nutrition as a problem, right? Like,
Right.
no, and no one's starving. Their issue is everyone's fat, right? So that is all a result of us getting the choice. We get to choose. And so most of us choose the path of least resistance because that's what organisms do. And it's been enabled by technology. We didn't always have that enabling. So now you have to choose difficulty, and that is very against human nature.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
I mean, I think about that's why you have to train yourself, for example, to go to the gym. Look, I'm not gonna sit here and be like say, oh man, that running 2 miles a day feels great.
Mhm.
Nah, man, that shit sucks. Sometimes I want to just I don't even drink. I just want to like lay in the bed and chill. But I know that if I don't push myself that way, it's going to suck.
Mhm.
My life is not going to be good. I know I won't have many. It's like building what I've known my writing. I've got to create content, and a lot of times creating the content is not just sit down, come up whatever I'm inspired by. No, it's a work. Sometimes I got to take a workman like approach and do research and make sure what I say is good. But what that does, that makes me smarter, and that puts something out into the world that turns me into a producer. The big thing I'm doing now, languages and chess. Uh, I have to put real effort into learning another language. Now, here's what I figured out traveling. You don't need to know Spanish. If you just want to go do the tourist thing, you
Right.
be all right. You don't need to know
Right.
you don't need to know Portuguese, you don't need no French, nothing. You'll be good. But your life takes on so much more meaning and you get so much more out of it when you do. Not only do you push yourself and see what you can do up here, but you get to connect with people socially. It opens up so many more avenues, and that adds meaning. But those are difficult things. At the very least, they're not nearly as enjoyable as sitting on your couch binging the latest Netflix show. And that's what most people are doing today. And no one suggests a new book to me, or I won't say no one because I've done very good at curating. But everyone will tell me the newest show I need to watch.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
see it all the time on Facebook. Ran out of stuff to watch on that somehow. Ran out of stuff to watch and need a new show. And I'm like,
Right.
how is this even possible? How about you tell me, like, how about you tell me that like your PR for your 1 minute mile is max? You can't get any faster. You need some help, like somebody. But you never hear those things because that's difficult. And,
That's
and we want here's the thing, we want the outcome of a difficult life. Like
mhm.
like I will say this. I can say this, and it's not a particularly arrogant statement. I think it's accurate and probably underplaying a little bit.
Mhm.
Most people would not mind to live my life. I don't. I'm not like some crazy rich dude. I have a lot more money than most people. But I had to work to accomplish that. I'm not a crazy bodybuilder. I'm not in like ripped or whatever. But I'm in much better shape than the average 36-year-old, and probably the average human in general.
Mhm.
But I've got a stable relationship of like, oh shit, man, she's been around 9 years now, something like that, right?
Mhm.
But that's not easy in the sense that, oh, we just fell together. No, you work through problems, things come up. You don't run at the first sign of difficulty. You actually embrace it and go, okay, how do we maintain the good parts, because every relationship is good when it's good. No one's having a great time with someone that goes, you know what, this sucks, right?
Right.
By definition, it's when things are getting bad that you go, okay, I'm gonna leave. But what I've done is what I try to do is I go, okay, what's important is how we disagree. We figure out a strategy. You deal with the uncomfortable stuff. Get used to ripping the band-aids off. That kind of
Mhm.
deal. So I say all that to say the problem is we don't have enough, but we've got to choose, and almost no one chooses difficulty.
So, how do you balance? I think you're onto something there. So, first off, I'm 36, and you are definitely in better shape than me. So you've got that going. But so I've been married, be 15 years in October. Got 4 kids.
Oh,
Uh,
that's excellent, man. Congrats.
Thank you. But to your point, that's not easy, right? It's not like that's a lot
Yeah,
of work.
but thing, and you know what you're gonna have when you're 55, because my goal is to start when I'm 40.
Mhm.
Uh, I've more or less decided that's when I'll do it, because I'll be a 60-year-old man when they're 20. Well, when the first one is 20, whatever. And that's not particular. Like I see 60-year-olds, and that's not old,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But my point is, like, what you have is when you get old, you're gonna have people around you.
Hmm.
When you've lost pretty much almost all ability to attract new people around you, you're gonna have a
A
big
little
old
tribe.
family. There's gonna be a lot of people in our age bracket who are gonna be like,
Right.
oh shit. I mean, you can't undo that one.
That's right. Well, the thing I think about when you say all that is, and I've talked about this some before. I don't think on this podcast is, see, right now we are talking about going to Mars, right, on this one way trip. So we keep telling people that we're gonna send someone to Mars, and it might be a one way trip. I suspect that day will never come for a lot of reasons. Um, but the main reason is because the explorers of old, whatever you want to think about some of the stuff they did, they believed that the reward was worth the risk. Crossing the ocean, going to this unknown land, going through all the problems that you're gonna have at sea, where you're gonna be, potentially get storms and pirates, and you're landing on a foreign nation. You don't know what's gonna be there. They believe that the reward was worth the risk. In modern society today, there's not a lot of reward and risk, right? Because to your point, if you want to eat, you want to kind of stay above board. I'm not talking about being rich, but just above board. That's not exactly the hardest thing to do. And so, if you really want to go after something, you have to risk, and then you have to believe that there's a reward there. And a lot of people don't get that concept; they don't connect those two things. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there is. I always say that you gotta have some impetuous. Your life has to be uncomfortable in some way, shape, or form. And not only has it be uncomfortable, you can't get used to that discomfort. And I see, I know people, they turn their necessity into a virtue, and they love being mediocre, or they tell themselves that, because that's a lot easier than raising yourself a level or two, whether it be making enough money to get a nice place,
Hmm.
or getting yourself and having some discipline about what you eat and some control, and and that type of thing. It's a lot easier to just say you like it, and a lot of people do that. But in terms of taking that's the micro level, I guess, on the person. On the macro level, I don't think people consider what it took to have for us to explore back in the day. Now I was telling somebody else I can get in a plane, be anywhere on this planet in under 40 or 48 hours. There's nowhere you can't go in under 48 hours, right? Even with layovers, you'll be there.
Yeah,
So before, man, we're talking about boat ride, not a boat with an engine.
not a cruise ship,
Right?
not a Carnival cruise.
Talking about a
Hell,
goddamn boat with scurvy and
yeah.
sensitivity to the waves, and you land, and whoever survives, then you got to go deal with what might be hostile tribes who not speak the same language as you, and figure out how to prosper. Even going from, like, whenever I fly out west, I always, it's like a 3 hour flight to Vegas, or a 3 hour flight to LA, 4 hour flight to LA, and I go, man, this used to be a journey that you took and you didn't expect to come back. It
You
was
might
like
not make it.
months. That
Yeah.
was it. And we used to do that. We did that because we believed there was something better. We believed in, but there was a reward. There wasn't much comfort either. It wasn't like we were going, it's easy to just sit around and talk shit on the internet. There was no internet. You had to go, like, stake your claim, man.
You didn't
In the
even know
world,
if what was there was true.
right? You just
You
knew.
couldn't FaceTime your uncle and be like, "Hey, tell me what's going on." There was a letter maybe that you got that's months old. They could all be dead by then.
Right. That's it. And we don't have any of that to spurn progress. And collectively, you need that spirit. A few smart people will always be trying to reach, but collectively, I think we need a spirit if we wanna reach a new height as a civilization, as a group. You can train individuals all you want, but individuals will always get kickback from the majority if their goal counteracts their comfort, and that's why I never thought of it that way. I tend to think about the technical difficulties of going to any place but Earth. I took a class, and when I in college, were called gravitational astrophysics, and one of the things I left that class with was the idea that we weren't ever getting off this rock, and we are going to live and die here. We either go extinct, or the sun is going to explode at the end of its life cycle in about 4 billion years. That's what I took
Mhm,
from that class. But my point is that I tend to think about the technical difficulty, not the motivation of leaving.
mhm. Well, I think there's plenty of technical difficulty as well. But I think ultimately, the technical difficulty existed in crossing the sea back in the 1600s.
Right.
But the difference was the belief was there. I don't really think if you took all the humans on Earth, you said, "Hey, do you want to go land on a red rock, never see anybody again, and die a death alone?" there's just not a lot of people who are signing up for that. A and B, the ones that are, not many of them would be qualified enough to do that. And so I don't think you have the potential to even push through the technological problems, because the reward is just very small. You go down a rock alone. Yeah, you're named history, but it's, it's anyways. There's nothing. I don't think there's much. There's not.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not the same. It just doesn't have that same cachet. That's just my take on it. Whereas, if you said, "Hey, we're gonna go find this new land, and we're gonna colonize it. We're gonna get some gold or whatever we think's there, spices."
Yeah, let them figure out there's gold up there, or some or platinum or something. Maybe not the collective, but enough people at that point they're gonna be like, "Oh, you mean there's gold?" Like, dude, I was watching this. I saw this story where they were talking about how asteroids probably have a bunch of gold on it. It just makes sense, and they were like, we'll figure out how to land on an asteroid
Mhm.
if that happens."
Ed, I'll let you go land on the first asteroid. Okay, you go land on it first. I'll come second. You go ahead and land on it. So
Figure it out.
let's figure it out. Um, Talk to me about being red pilled. You have a speech online. I'll link to in the show notes about being red pilled. Why is that important to you? What's the point of in talking about that? And what does it mean?
So in general, right? There's the general and the specific application. And I make sure I give both because uh, sometimes people take things out of context, out of and then not in good faith. It's one thing to be confused because you genuinely are confused, and perhaps my explanation wasn't clear. It's a totally different story when you try to find contradiction in the wording or the ideas. And usually, and I'm a smart guy, or I try to be a smart guy. And so I put a lot of thought into how I define things. So I know that if you find a contradiction in how I did it, you typically are going to. There's a good chance I'm going to make you look dumb and raise your issue with your explanation. Anyhow, I say all that to say that the general idea of the red pill is just understanding the true motivations and purpose of anything that you see, right, or anything you experience. There's the good reason that they tell you, but then there's the real reason. And our goal is kind of being red pilled is to understand the real reason. Now, it's not always cloaked, and sometimes the good reason is the real reason, but very often, at least often enough, to where there's a phrasing and a terminology about it. Very often, the real reason is not the good reason. And once you understand the real reason, that would, in most cases, alter how you proceed. So it's an active kind of deception that may, for the greater good, be necessary. I'm not saying that it's always best that everyone knows the exact truth and is red pill about everything. For example, I think one of the things that sustains our economy and our relationships is a general blue pilling, the opposite of red pilling, a general blue pilling of men in relationships. The problem is that when you are, now we're getting into kind of the specifics in the dating world, the intersexual dynamics where it was originally conceived, is that when the red pill there is just understanding the true nature of women. All right, and I say that yes, society. It is society, and our economy is kind of dependent on men being blue pilled. And this actually wasn't a problem for most of culture because we had an implicit agreement. I'll pretend, and then I don't remember where I read this, but they were like, "I'll pretend. If you tell me there's an elephant in the room, I'll pretend to see that elephant, and I'll go along with that game as long as you don't require or ask anything of me uh, that makes me that makes this illusion of the elephant not my best interest to maintain." Right? That was kind of the implicit agreement that we worked out, but amongst the sexes, right? So, for example, I'll pretend that I'll pretend that you're sugar and spice and everything nice. You don't go out and post selfies of yourself looking for attention on Instagram, and you don't take half my money in divorce. That's the all right, or rather, or I'll pay for everything on a date, but you don't go on a bunch of dates and screw a bunch of guys. Whichever guy you end up with, that's kind of who you end up with. And that was the implicit deal, right? Now things have changed, and so the rules have to change. Where men are behind, what we got to red pill them is men are still operating on the old conditioning. They don't realize the game has changed. Go bring flowers to a girl on a date, your first date, and see how that works out for you. That used to work because there was an implicit agreement. I'll be polite and nice to you, and you'll be nice. You know how, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but you're not going to ridicule me for it. You're not going to make a post about it. You're not going to go with a guy who treats you like shit. Yeah, it's just going to be because I wasn't your match, not because the dope dealer who plays in a band and is unemployed and doesn't even want to be with you seriously because he's a more exciting match kind of deal. So now that the structure has changed, our thinking has to change. And if it doesn't change, well, you I actually, what's funny? Now that I say this, I think to call these guys blue pilled is a bit of a misnomer because part of being in a blue pill, where we keep the analogy to where it came from the Matrix, is that you just kind of go on blissfully, right? You're not unhappy. Part of what's implied in the Matrix is that knowing the truth has a burden. Okay, and you can go back to not knowing and be relaxed. But now not knowing hurts your heart, and that's why you have to. That is exactly why it's imperative that guys kind of open their eyes. Now, what they do with that information, I was just having this discussion with another guy. Or what they do with that information is up to them. Some guys decide that they're going to rally back and save the West. Others are like, I'm going to make a family. Others are like, forget that, enjoy the decline. I'm just sleep as many women as possible and hang out. Maybe other guys are like, I'm going my own way. I want nothing to do with this.
Uh-huh.
But they all do it from a position of knowledge. It is when you make decisions from a position of ignorance the problem, position of a blue pill. So hope that kind of sums it up.
Yeah, so I find that interesting, and I know we're up on time here, so I'll try to keep this short. Um, it's tough because we do live in a kind of the matrix is great with the blue pill, red pill, and you live in a world where people they want to go along with the status quo because that is comfortable to them. They don't have to buck the system. And the red pilling is fascinating because then you kind of step outside of that. I think the problem that we're seeing with kind of the red pilled society, which I'll be happy to put myself in as well, is that to your point, I don't think people really have the structure to know what to do with once they're red pilled. And so
Right.
if you
Oh,
take so if you take something, you say, okay, well, and I'll say all this here. I won't let you. You don't have to respond to this specific example, but if you take political person A, and you say, well, I'm red pill now, and so I know that these people are lying to me, but this person here is kind of represents my interest. The problem that you see is that the red pill people then become blue pilled on the red pill candidate,
yep.
the red pill idea, whether it's a political candidate or to your point, how to operate, and so they actually become blue pilled in a red pill way because and it's almost
It's interesting. Politics is interesting, and this is something that I don't really talk about much anymore. But anybody can see me on record several times saying this, and it's 100% true. I don't vote. I don't pay attention to politics because I understand that no matter what side it is, everyone is jockeying for some agenda that is not typically in my best interest and almost never purely motivated by the people's best interest. It's you can follow lobbying and donations and that tells you a big story. You can look at some of the absurdities put in place. A lot of it's just bending to what is not necessarily. So see, I don't. My idea of a government is a government that kind of maintains order, as opposed to and it's probably but as hands off as possible. I guess that's a libertarian, right? But
Mhm.
what you see is there's a government that has its agenda, right? Whatever its agenda is, and whether that is a blue or a red agenda, whatever, and then everything else is based through that agenda, and then all the marketing is done through that because they recognize the people see that and go, okay, I'm going to vote based on this, I'm going to vote based on that, right? And what I've observed, and this is one of the benefits of growing up disenfranchised and poor
Right.
through four different administrations on both sides, Republican and Democrat. You realize that nobody's coming to save you. Uh,
That's right.
and it really does, like the time and energy I gotta spend to put it, like I could just lie to people and be like, yeah, I voted whatever, and then they'll leave me alone. But then that turns into another
Right.
discussion, and I'm like, okay, now I know that if I want to avoid the discussion, because I can deal with people, arguing back, I'm just like, look, your choice, my choice, whatever, I know that it's just not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is am I in a position for when things go poorly, which they will. Once you, and that's the thing, once you kind of see what really makes a difference in this country, it's not the laws, because the laws, or rather, it's not who's in charge. It is the people, and we even vote. We even vote a person in who makes a decision, and things in the Supreme Court can be overturned and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like it's not. So what you want to do, what my thought process is to make sure you're in a position to be mobile and to ignore a lot of things if you want to. Like right now, I got one level of freedom. I don't have to work, so I don't have to watch what I say or think. Not that I have that issue, but I don't want, like it's knowing I won't have that issue, right? So I don't have to work. I don't do that. I know at least one other language good enough to live in another place, and working on my second and third simultaneously, kind of. That's another thing. My fiance is not an American citizen, so when I marry her, I'll be able to get out. That's another thing. So I think of these things. That's my response to it. But everyone has their own response. I
Right.
personally like to follow data, and I understand that I'll make a conclusion based on that data, which may or may not be accurate, but it's a data-driven conclusion. It's not an emotionally driven one. And what I see is that this place is, America is always going to be America, because America is a great, interesting anomaly, really, in history. But uh, technology has done a number, because everyone is taking the easy way, and we got to make sure that we have a way around that, around the worst that can happen.
Okay, I'll let you go with this one here. You have a tweet from June 5th, 2021 at 6:42 a.m. Normalize good manners and etiquette. People, if you do not understand if you don't hear that and you don't understand the depth of that tweet, then you need to think about it. I don't want you to respond, Ed. I want them to go to read your stuff to follow. In today's society, it's statements like that I hear and I appreciate, because if you don't understand why that's important, then you really are missing the boat.
Yeah, you need good manners. I learned about your good manners through my upbringing, man. You have bad manners. You didn't say my bad. You didn't say excuse me. You
That's
didn't
right.
show respect. And it's interesting. People think about the hood as this crazy place, and it is a crazy place. But no need to make a crazy place crazier. And one of the best ways to avoid that is treat people with respect and have good manners when you talk to somebody, because what's the easiest way for somebody to be like, I want to fight this guy? Well, I don't like how he was talking to me. You ain't got to say it like
That's
that.
exactly right.
You're right. So
I always say this: if you go to, if you've been to an emerging market, a third world country, one of the things you find out pretty quickly is they don't obey traffic laws. Like traffic laws are optional in a lot of these countries. And as an American, where everyone stops and we go and you realize just not stopping at the traffic light or running the red light 7 seconds past, like in South Africa when I've been there. If the light turned green, I'm
right.
looking around, they're like,
Same in Mexico,
like,
man.
no, don't go. You go like 7 seconds before everyone clear through. It's those type of things we don't realize in the U.S. is how much they are the fabric of our society, and having etiquette and manners, treating people nice. Those are just the fabric that we have to preserve if we're going to preserve any semblance of a society. Okay, edlatimore.com is the website. At Ed Latimore on Twitter. You're on Instagram as well, the same, I believe.
Yep, I'm Ed Latimore everywhere, man. I got that name on lock,
There you
Monopoly.
go. Well, listen, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it and enjoy the time. Listeners, go check out Ed's stuff. He's got always good things to say. And with that being said, we'll talk to you. Let's see, this is Friday. I guess talk to you next week.
Awesome, man. It'll be good to hear. I'm looking forward.